This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles and joining me today is from our EBC Cambodia Bureau. Hello, Crystal Ann. All right, Crystal, we can't hear you. Hello there. Can you hear me? Okay, on today's headlines. The United States on Monday donated $18 million worth of precision-guided munitions to the Philippines, which would be used by the government in counter-terrorism operations.
So on behalf of President...
The U.S. National Security Advisor lauded the Filipino nurses in the United States who are in this fight against COVID-19. Malacanang Tuesday warned tianguis or bazaar operators of possible closure if they fail to observe minimum health and safety standards to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And do you love shopping online or do you sell online? Know your rights as a consumer, responsibilities as an entrepreneur, and things to do to ensure you are protected online.
It becomes faster, cheaper, and...
First, the United States on Monday donated $18 million worth of precision-guided munitions to the Philippines, which would be used by the government in counter-terrorism operations. U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien is in Manila as part of a Southeast Asian tour that also included Vietnam. Now, he said the transfer underscores the U.S. government's strong and enduring commitment to the critical alliance of the U.S. and the Philippines. Take a look.
So today, on behalf of President Trump, and it's an honor for me to be here because I was on the initial phone call between President Trump and President Duterte when they spoke about the fight against terrorism that the Philippines is so valiantly waging and the need for some munitions. I'm pleased to transfer a package of precision-guided missiles, munitions, including 100 TOW-2 Alpha missiles, 12 ITAS, and 24 Mk-82s to the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And Mr. Secretary, let me just hand you a letter on behalf of
against COVID-19.
This transfer underscores our strong and enduring commitment to a critical alliance. We hope these precision-guided missiles and munitions will help the AFP protect Philippine lives in Mindanao and end the needless suffering imposed by ISIS East Asia. The United States has been at the forefront of the fight against ISIS. The United States in the Middle East has destroyed 100% of the physical caliphate. That was a caliphate the size of Great Britain, extending across Syria and Iraq. It was destroyed under President Trump's orders. Further, President Trump gave the orders for a daring nighttime raid that led to justice being brought to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the founder and leader of ISIS. Now President Trump is standing with President Duterte as we combat ISIS here in Southeast Asia.
Now, as we heard earlier, he said the transfer underscores the U.S. government's strong and enduring commitment to the critical alliance between the two countries. DFA Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. received the donation on behalf of the Philippine government. He also said the smart bombs would boost the capability of the armed forces of the Philippines in neutralizing identified or specific threats to the country's national security, particularly in counter-terrorism operations. Let's listen in.
On behalf of the Philippine government, the donation by the United States government of precision-guided munitions, or PGMs, valued at approximately $18 million. This is the fulfillment of a promise made by U.S. President Donald J. Trump to President Duterte during their phone call in April. We look forward to training on the use of these weapons with the best and undisputed military power in the world, and the only one in history selflessly dedicated to the freedom and independence of other countries wherever threatened in the world. These smart bombs will boost the capability of our armed forces in neutralizing identified or specific threats to national security, particularly in counter-terrorism operations. In spite of the challenges we face due to the pandemic that has spread like wildfire around the world, the Philippines remains watchful against threats to our islands and waters and our people. This gesture reflects our strategic alignment of interests and our shared aspirations for enduring peace and stability for both our countries and the greater region. It is demonstrative of President Trump's staunch support for the Philippines to counter both internal and external security threats, and emblematic of our two leaders' trust in each other. On behalf of my President and the government of the Philippines, President Trump, friends in the U.S. government, thank you very much. God save America. God save the Philippines.
Thank you, Secretary Locsin.
In a related news, U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien represented President Trump in Monday's ceremony at the Department of Foreign Affairs in Manila. Now, he said the U.S. stands with the Philippines in its effort to protect its sovereign rights in the South China Sea. The Philippines announced last month that it would resume oil and gas explorations in or near Reed Bank, which lies off the country's western coast and is also claimed by China. Let's listen in.
Know that the United States stands shoulder to shoulder with the Philippines. Our nations share a deep interest in upholding the rule of law and the rules-based international order that is underwritten and enduring peace in Asia, peace, stability, and prosperity across the Indo-Pacific region since the end of the Second World War. And we welcome the recent statements by President Duterte and the Secretary at the U.S.-ASEAN Summit and the East Asia Summit, in which I participated, calling for all nations, including a certain large nation in the neighborhood, to respect international law in the South China Sea. Earlier this year, the United States formally aligned our position on the South China Sea with the Arbitral Tribunal's 2016 ruling. We stand with the Philippines in protecting your sovereign rights, your offshore resources, and all of those rights that are consistent with international law. And I just want to say that those resources belong to the children and the grandchildren of the people here. They belong to the Philippine people. They don't belong to some other country that just because they may be big and they may be bigger than the Philippines, they can come take away and convert the resources of the Philippine people. That's just wrong. And that's why Secretary Pompeo said in February, any armed attack on Philippine forces, aircraft, or public vessels in the South China Sea will trigger our mutual defense obligations.
Now, back in July, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo escalated the Trump administration's attacks against China by declaring that Washington regards virtually all Chinese maritime claims in the disputed waterway as illegitimate. Now, China reacted angrily by accusing the U.S. of sowing discord between Beijing and neighboring Asian states. Now, the U.S. National Security Advisor also lauded the Filipino nurses in the United States who he said are in this fight against COVID-19. Let's listen in.
So on behalf of President Trump and the American people, I want to start today talking about something other than the weapon systems that are coming to help in the fight against terrorism. But I want to express my deepest condolences and President Trump's deepest condolences to the people of the Philippines who've been affected by Super Typhoon Goni and Typhoon Vamco. The United States stands with the Philippine people during this very difficult time in this natural disaster. We're providing life-saving support to those most affected, and we're going to work hard to restore the livelihoods and access to critical resources together with your government. We're also battling Corona side by side. Since March, the United States has donated 1.1 billion Philippine pesos, or $23.4 million US to assist in the combating of COVID-19 in the Philippines. We've donated 100 brand new ventilators, 1,300 cots, and as well as PPE for 49 medical facilities. And I want to make just a personal point, coming from California, where we have many, many Philippine Americans, and many of whom are involved in the healthcare sector. There are Filipino Americans and Filipinos that are in America today in our hospitals and on the front lines taking care of Americans, and we're grateful for that. And the Philippines can be very proud of your countrymen and your native sons and daughters who are doing so much for us as we battle COVID in our country. The United States stands with you in this fight, and we're behind you, and you're in our prayers, and we know that we are in your prayers.
Meanwhile, the Chinese embassy in the Philippines scored the United States for what it deemed interference in the affairs of Asian countries. They pointed out that the U.S. has not even recognized the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. The Chinese embassy statement attributed to its spokesperson denounced the statement of O'Brien as full of Cold War mentality and wantonly incite confrontation. In a report in the Business Mirror, it said that the Chinese embassy said the U.S. itself refused to join the UNCLOS, but it keeps talking about the UN body and abused its provisions everywhere, infringing upon the maritime rights and interests of other countries. The Chinese embassy also said that Mr. O'Brien had made some unreasonable remarks on the South China Sea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan issues during his visit to the Philippines. They said that O'Brien's visit to the region is not to promote regional peace and stability, but to create chaos in the region in order to seek selfish interests of the U.S., unquote. At Monday's ceremonial turnover to Secretary Locsin, Mr. O'Brien told the DFA chief, "These are meant to help the armed forces of the Philippines fight the terrorists in southern Philippines imposed by ISIS, which is Islamic State in Iraq and Syria in East Asia."
International Container Terminal Services Incorporation explained is the funding for
Christian Razon Gonzalez of the International Container Terminal Services Incorporated explained that the funding for the purchase of the vaccine for COVID-19 under the tripartite agreement of the national government, pharmaceutical company, and the private sector company. According to ICTSI, they will pay the initial 2 million doses of vaccine for the country, and then half of it will be allocated for equitable distribution by the Department of Health. It remains to be seen who will share the remaining 50% of the vaccines, and will certainly include essential logistics service providers and employees employees of the ICTSI and the entire Razon Group. Let's listen in.
I'd like to point out that this is really an initiative of AstraZeneca, the UK government, the Philippine government, particularly Secretary Galvez, Secretary Dizon, and the rest of the IATF and DOH. Under this, what will be a tri-party agreement, SEC, ang mangyayari dito is private sector will shoulder the cost not only of the 50% deposit for the AstraZeneca vaccine, but likewise the remaining 50% due once the vaccine is delivered, which is expected now to be sometime in the second quarter of 2021. Yung guidelines naman will be a separation of 50% of this vaccine will be purely for the use of DOH under what is called equitable distribution to be determined by the government. The other 50% will be for the private entity to determine. And naturally, one of the targets that we will have, of course, will be our own employees. But in the case of ICTSI, we strongly believe that some of the key essential services members that really made the biggest impact, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, were yung mga empleyado ng Philippine Ports Authority, Bureau of Customs, and other essential frontline port and logistics workers. So ang magiging emphasis namin for the remaining 50% of our share of the AstraZeneca vaccine that is delivered will be for those essential logistics service providers. And of course, as I mentioned, the employees of ICTSI and the entire Razon Group.
Okay. So, Mr. Gonzales, ito pala po ay yung bibili natin sa AstraZeneca. Meron na ba ho tayong target kung magkano at you don't have to answer kung covered po ito ng confidentiality clause. Pero masasabi nyo ba ho kung ilan yung volume na babayaran muna ng private sector, kalahati ibibigay sa gobyerno, kalahati ibibigay sa empleyado, at ilang mga tauhan din ng gobyerno?
From what I understand, no, Sec, is yung allocation ng Pilipinas is approximately 3 to 5 million doses. At saka meron na tayong commitments as of today for up to 2 million doses to be funded by the private sector.
Okay, let's now go to Malaysia, where it just recorded its highest daily number or figure of COVID-19 cases. Joining us live is Gail Aldos. Hello, Gail.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Gail. How are you doing? Good to see you back.
I'm doing good, thank you. Yes, I'm back. Yes, so here is the latest update. Malaysia's highest daily case figure is now at 2,188 cases, which was reported yesterday at November 24. The country has recorded 2,188 new cases, which is currently the highest daily case figure the country has seen since the pandemic broke out in March. According to the Health Director General, Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah, the highest number of cases came from the state of Selangor with 1,623, with most of it involving the Teratai cluster with 1,511 cases. The Teratai cluster is connected to a top glove factory in Selangor that contributed to the influx of cases in the state. According to Dr. Nur Hisham, the Teratai cluster recorded the highest cases, with currently a total of 4,036 cases since the pandemic outbreak. With this new daily case figure, Malaysia has now a cumulative total of 58,847 positive cases. The total number of active cases currently is now at 14,353, with 112 active cases currently at the intensive care unit and 49 currently requiring ventilator support. Meanwhile, the number of recoveries yesterday was 1,673, leading to a total of 44,153 discharged or recovered cases. which is actually 75% of the overall cumulative cases in the nation. In addition, there has been a record of 4 new deaths, which makes overall deaths in the country due to COVID-19 to 341 cases as of yesterday. That is all from me. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Gail. You take care over there, and looking forward to more updates there in Malaysia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alma. Same to you. Take care. This is Gail Aldos reporting live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We live in interesting times.
Back to here in the Philippines, Malacanang warned Changgis or bazaar operators of possible closure if they fail to observe minimum health and safety standards to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. In a palace press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque issued a reminder as more people are expected to flock to Changgis with the holiday season fast approaching. Let's listen in.
Pwede po, kung maalala nyo, nung tayo po'y unang-unang nagluwag, talagang dinagsaan ng tao ang mga malls at mayroong mga malls na sinarado po ng mga lokal na pamahalaan. So i-remind ko lang po mga Changi operators po, pwede po kayo mapasara kapag hindi nyo po inobserve ang social distancing. Po pwede naman pong limitahan yung mga pumapasok sa mga Changi, kinakailangan lang magkaroon ng special entry at exit points. Pag hindi po kayo nag-control ng crowd, baka mapasara kayo, lalo kayo mawalan ng negosyo.
He also reminded them to ensure that only a limited number of shoppers inside stores and that there are designated entry-exit points for shoppers. Now, Secretary Roque also urged local government units to do their part in monitoring Changgis to prevent people from gathering and crowding in one area. Now, human rights lawyers and activists said that Myanmar is continuing to commit genocide against Rohingya Muslims in breach of orders by the UN's top court. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, in January rejected arguments made personally by Myanmar civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi in The Hague and imposed urgent interim measures on the predominantly Buddhist nation. The ICJ ordered Myanmar to cease the commission of genocidal acts, prevent the destruction of evidence of crimes against the Rohingyas, and report back to the UN every 6 months. The genocide is still ongoing. Tan Ken, president of Burma Rohingya Organization UK, said this in a statement on Monday, the deadline for the second report. The group is one of the most prominent Rohingya rights organizations. A brutal military crackdown in 2017 is thought to have killed thousands and forced some 750,000 Rohingya to flee to refugee camps in Bangladesh. Around 600,000 more Rohingya remain in Myanmar, however, stripped of citizenship in what rights activists describe as apartheid conditions. Myanmar denies committing genocide, justifying the 2017 operations as a means of rooting out Rohingya insurgents.
Myanmar's election day took place smoothly, but the vote overall lacked transparency and inclusiveness, say monitoring group PACE, which had more than 2,500 observers around the country.
So like if we are talking about the scale 1 to 10, so I would just get only 5 because the whole pre-election period was very untransparent, and the inclusiveness is also, from our perspective, even though we got about 37 million elective voters, at the same time we got a lot of people has been disenfranchised in the Rakhine area. Majority of them are from Rakhine. So on the election day, there is some discrepancy, like more voters in some polling stations. That's not the widespread. In terms of the scale, it's not that big. But the problems originated at the pre-election period, like COVID-19, the regulations, and the incumbent advantages during the pre-election period. But except from these few administrative discrepancy. On election day, it was peaceful and smooth. And then I think the way the poll workers working are very efficient. Today, I see it was pretty much impressive, very impressive arrangement in terms of distributing marks, hand gel, and glove. But the only thing I was concerned was like there were 1/3 of the polling station they were not control the 6 feet social distancing instruction. So that's something we need to consider, how to making sure that they are non-partisan and independent. And secondly, the voter list. How are we going to make sure the voter list is clean and updated?
Aung San Suu Kyu's ruling party secured an absolute majority in Myanmar's election. Official results show Friday in a poll disputed by the military-aligned opposition and criticized by right groups. The National League for Democracy had already declared a landslide victory based on its own tallies, prompting street celebrations by supporters. But official figures were still being returned 5 days after the ballot, only the second such poll since the nation emerged from outright military rule in 2011. Results announced by the Election Commission Friday showed the NLD had won 346 seats, more than 50% of parliament, even taking into account the quarter of seats reserved for the military under the constitution. The party is on track to improve on its landslide win in 2015, despite widespread dissolution in many ethnic minority areas.
In other news around the region, Singapore has deported 15 Bangladeshis over social media posts that incited violence or encouraged communal unrest in response to recent terror attacks in France, according to officials. France is on high alert following jihadist attacks in recent weeks, including the beheading of a teacher who showed his pupils cartoons of the Prophet of the Islam Prophet Muhammad and a deadly assault on a Nice church. President Emmanuel Macron's defense of the right to publish the cartoons has sparked demonstrations in Muslim-majority countries, including Bangladesh, where tens of thousands took to the streets. Now, security agencies in Singapore have been on heightened alert since early September, and as a result of their investigations, the Bangladeshis were deported, according to the Interior Ministry. The individuals, most of whom were construction workers, put up social media posts which incited violence or stoked communal unrest in response to the attacks in France, according to the ministry in a statement. Officials didn't disclose the content of the posts. Singapore is majority ethnic Chinese, but has a sizable Muslim minority. It has over 300,000 low-paid migrant workers, including many from South Asia, working in industries including construction.
Hello there. Imagine Dami got the virus, and she infected 2 more. And those 2 infected a lot more of people. And it goes on and on until it became an epidemic. But what if Dami stayed at home? Then those 2 wouldn't have contracted the virus. then those people would have not been infected. This is not just your battle, it's everyone's, and you can be a huge help. Follow social distancing, or better yet, stay at home.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas on Tuesday denied allegations that it spent millions for the design and development of its new logo. In a statement, the central bank said the new logo, a gold-colored, full-bodied eagle with wings spread upward, was developed by in-house talents who share their skills in the process. Thus, no procurement was required. The statement was issued a few days after a news report said the central bank allocated about 52.5 million pesos for this year for its new logo. Quoting the central bank's final audit or annual procurement plan for 2020, Billionario.com.ph cited the 30 million pesos budget for the Corporate Affairs Office for public relations and advertising programs for BSP branding, circulars, advisories, notices, and corporate ads, and the 15 million pesos for production and replication of ad materials for television, radio, among others. It also cited the 7.5 million pesos budget allocated for public relations and advertising programs for the whole year. Earlier, the central bank said the new logo will be done in phases with details scheduled to be announced in January next year.
Top Globe Corporation BHG expect its revenue for the current financial year ending August 31, 2021 to be impacted by 3% following the temporary suspension of manufacturing facilities in Klang, Selangor. However, Bernama reports that the world's biggest rubber glove manufacturer, in a reply to Bursa Malaysia, said it does not anticipate a penalty from the delay in delivery. Top Glove has seen a huge jump in demand since the start of the pandemic as countries scrambled to stock up on protective equipment, pushing up both its profits and share price. But there has been a cluster of virus outbreaks among Top Glove's employees, many of whom are low-paid migrant workers, at factories in an industrial area near the capital, Kuala Lumpur. More than 1,000 cases were recorded Monday, prompting the government to order the plants to close. About 5,700 workers have already been screened and the rest will also undergo tests, it said. Top Glove did not say how the closures would affect its ability to meet orders. The company operates 47 factories, 41 in Malaysia, and many of its workers are from Nepal and live in crowded dormitory complexes. The company can produce more than 70 billion of gloves a year and is a major global supplier. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Van Phuc held talks with his Cambodian counterpart Samdech Techo Hun Sen via video conferencing on November 24 to discuss ways to enhance the bilateral relations and exchange views on some international and regional issues of shared concern. Prime Minister Hun Sen congratulated Vietnam's recent achievements, especially the successful organization of the 37th ASEAN Summit and related summits, affirming Cambodia's continued cooperation with Vietnam as an ASEAN member and support for the latter's role as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 2020 to 2021. He expressed his belief that Vietnam will maintain good control of the COVID-19 pandemic, make swift socio-economic recovery and development, and successfully organize the 13th National Party Congress. Vietnam and Cambodia will work closely together within the ASEAN framework. The leaders pledge, noting that they will direct their countries' ministries, sectors, and localities to coordinate with each other to strengthen the COVID-19 fight, while dealing with any issues emerging in a timely manner and the spirit of friendship and cooperation.
In other news, China will consider joining a free trade pact once championed by the U.S. but abandoned by Donald Trump. President Xi Jinping said on Friday as Beijing increasingly seeks to influence the global rules of commerce. Now, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, is an updated version of a giant deal originally backed by former U.S. President Barack Obama as an effort to counter China's rising might in Asia. Now, President Trump pulled out of it after winning the presidency in 2016 as he turned away from what he viewed as unfavorable multilateral deals, but 11 countries eventually agreed to sign the new version. Addressing the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Summit, President Xi said the grouping must continue to promote regional economic integration and establish an Asia-Pacific free trade zone at an early date. The President Xi also said China will actively consider joining the CPTPP. President Trump attended this year's virtual summit, the first time he has participated since 2017, as he continues to challenge his election defeat to Mr. Joe Biden. President Xi's comments came just days after Beijing and 14 other countries signed what will be the world's biggest trade deal, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. Now, that deal, which comprises 30% of the world's total economic output and excludes the U.S., was viewed as a major coup for China at a time Washington is retreating. Singapore-based international trade expert Deborah Elms said that if China did join the CPTPP, it could encourage others to follow.
Love online shopping, or do you sell online? Know your rights as a consumer, responsibilities as an entrepreneur, and things to do to ensure you are protected online. Meet the ASEAN Committee on Consumer Protection, ACCP, the partner of ASEAN consumers.
Nowadays, people go to the internet to do a number of different things. One of them is to buy and sell products online. It becomes faster, cheaper, and more convenient. But there are also risks that may cause loss or harm. As consumers, it is important to know that you have the right to information and the right to seek compensation. Businesses have the responsibility to respect consumer rights by providing accurate information, addressing consumer complaints, and providing replacements for faulty products or refunds for unsatisfactory services. To this end, consumer protection agencies under the ASEAN Committee on Consumer Protection, or the ACCP, put in place laws and regulations to ensure secure online shopping and mechanisms for dispute resolution for all consumers in ASEAN. It is important to have a high level of consumer awareness about checking the company registry, reading the products or services reviews, verifying the use of safe websites, and studying the terms and conditions carefully. Moreover, responsible business practices need to be promoted, such as ensuring good quality products and satisfactory services, price transparency and secure payment channels, on-time delivery, and providing a customer care hotline. Lastly, effective law enforcement is essential. This is achieved by implementing relevant regulations, guiding businesses to abide by those regulations, informing consumers and encouraging them to exercise their rights. All of this will make shopping online not only easy, but also safe for consumers in ASEAN.
Basain ang kamay ng tubig at lagyan ng sabon. Kuskusin ang iyong mga palad. Gayon din ang pagitan ng mga daliri. Pati na ang likod ng mga palad at daliri. Ganon din ang iyong hinalaki, kasama ang mga dulo ng iyong mga daliri. Pagkatapos ay iyong palapulsuhan. Gawin ito ng kahit 20 segundo. Pagkatapos ay banlawan ng tubig at patuyuin.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the XMen series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
The future Asean agenda for technical and vocational education and training, or TVET, was published and presented to delegates of ASEAN member states at the 9th Regional Policy Dialogue on TVET in Bangkok, Thailand, back in June 2019. Now, COVID-19 has accelerated ASEAN's to pivot towards the digital economy. It forced companies to rethink how they operate. Cutting across all sectors, the pandemic has allowed the rare opportunity for companies to reset. Let's take a look.
The fourth industrial revolution, coronavirus pandemic, and other global events are disrupting the world of work. Is the ASEAN human resource ready for this? The Cisco and Oxford Economics in its study in 2018 projected that 6.6 million jobs in the ASEAN today will no longer be required by 2028 under new technology scenario. Workers will be displaced because of the adoption of new technologies, but this will also create new demands for workers with different skill sets. TVET and lifelong learning are keys to achieving sustainable development with a competitive workforce amidst continuous structural changes in the economy. Reforming TVET governance at the ASEAN level is crucial, and the establishment of the ASEAN TVET Council shall provide a platform for cross-sector and cross-pillar discourse for coordinated actions among the key stakeholders in skills development. The ATC shall work on strong regional collaborative efforts in TVET, such as reforms in policies, innovations in TVET systems, mobility of workers through mutual recognition of skills and qualifications. The ASEAN TVET Council will facilitate and sustain partnerships and collaborations in TVET at the ASEAN level. With the ASEAN TVET Council in place, we envision an ASEAN workforce who is ready to take advantage of the digital age and succeed above economic restructuring and transformations in the future. The ASEAN TVET Council, working on a future-ready workforce, ensuring an ASEAN community that is resilient and competitive.
Now we are pleased to present to you the ASEAN TVET Council focal points. The ASEAN TVET Council is composed of the senior officials from the National TVET Councils, Ministry of Commerce, Industry or Trade, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, and other relevant ministries from all the ASEAN member states. The Philippines, through the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, holds the inaugural chairmanship of the Council until 2022. The TVET Council is also represented by the business and industry sector and other relevant stakeholders at the regional level through the ASEAN Confederation of Employers, ASEAN Trade Union Council, ASEAN Future Workforce Council, and the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Secretariat. The ASEAN Secretariat shall provide the necessary technical support for the effective functioning of the Council.
With music, treats, and balloons, friends of Pakistan's only Asian elephant threw a farewell party for the creature ahead of its relocation to Cambodia, following years of campaigning by animal rights activists. The plight of Kaavan or Kavan, an overweight 35-year-old bull elephant, has drawn international condemnation and highlighted the woeful state of Islamabad, where conditions are so bad that a judge in May ordered all the animals to be moved.
It was a
I think Dr. Namit needs to see this.
That it should go to a safe.
We decided to organize an event to give the opportunity to the people from Pakistan, but also the government, to say goodbye to Kavan, to offer him this new life in Cambodia, and so we want to wish him a happy retirement.
Bye-bye, Kavan.
I'm meeting Kavan for the first time, and I had a great meeting with him, and I was really kind of like a little sad that he was leaving. I wish I could spend some more time, but he deserves that life that people are planning to give him, and I think it was a beautiful goodbye. I was singing and he was listening, and he was the main audience for me, so it was great. It's a great goodbye.
All right, thank you very much, Crystal Ann, for joining me today. Let me know when the elephant gets there.
Thank you so much, Alma, and sorry for the technical issue earlier.
It's okay, it's okay. As long as you're here, in the end, we're still here.
And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today. And Akun Charan Alma, this is Crystal Ann Ballesteros from your EBC Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Crystal Ann. You have to teach me that. Thank you very much. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.